The cardiac monitor wasn't just beeping, it was screaming. That continuous high-pitched wail, a flatline, is a sound that haunts the nightmares of every medical professional. In room 402 of St. Jude's Hospital at 3:04 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday, the sound announced the end of Sarah Jenkins. Dr. Robert Sterling didn't panic. He didn't rush. He stood at the foot of the bed, his arms crossed, watching the green line stay flat. He was a man of science, a man of cold, hard facts, and the fact before him was undeniable. The patient was dead. He checked his watch, a mechanical gesture devoid of soul. He sighed, the sound muffled by his surgical mask, and announced to the silent, dimly lit room, time of death 3:04 a.m. The nurses, exhausted from a 12-hour shift, lowered their heads. One of them, Nurse Ramirez, wiped a tear from her cheek. She had grown fond of the old woman. But Dr. Sterling felt nothing. To him, death wasn't a tragedy. It was just biology doing its job, an equation resolving to zero. He turned on his heel, ready to fill out the paperwork, ready to move on to the next problem, the next patient, the next day. But he didn't see what happened 3 seconds later. He didn't see the woman's hand, pale and cold as marble, twitch against the sterile white sheet. He didn't see her chest, which had been still as stone, inflate with a breath that defied every law of physiology. And he certainly didn't hear the whisper. 4 words. Just 4 words spoken with a guttural force that seemed to vibrate the very air in the room. 4 words that would make that dead monitor scream back to life, shatter Dr. Sterling's atheism into 1,000 pieces, and terrify everyone standing in that room. Stay with me. You need to hear this story, not just because it's a miracle, but because what Sarah saw in the darkness before she woke up, it concerns you. It concerns all of us. And once you know the 4 words she used to break the chains of death, you will never pray the same way again. To understand the magnitude of this miracle, we cannot start in the ICU. We have to go back 6 months to a small, drafty house on the outskirts of Dayton, Ohio. Sarah Jenkins was 62 years old, but she looked 80. Life hadn't just been hard on her, it had been brutal. She was a widow, living in the fading echoes of a marriage that ended 10 years ago, when her husband Arthur died of a sudden heart attack. Since then, the silence in her house was deafening. But Sarah wasn't just battling loneliness, she was battling invisibility. You know the type, the elderly woman counting pennies in the grocery line while people behind her sigh impatiently, the woman who sits in the back row of the church wearing the same coat she's worn for 5 winters. She had 2 children, a son named David and a daughter named Emily, but they were busy. That's the word they always used, busy. David hadn't visited in 3 years. He lived 2 hours away. Emily called on Christmas. Sometimes. Sarah's only constant companion was pain. It started as a dull ache in her stomach, something she dismissed as indigestion or old age. But over the months, the ache turned into a claw. It felt like something was living inside her, twisting her insides every time she tried to eat. But Sarah had a routine. Every morning, before the sun dared to rise, she would sit in her worn blue velvet armchair. She would open a Bible that was literally falling apart, the cover held together by duct tape, pages stained with coffee and tears, and she would talk to God. "Lord," she would say, her voice cracking, "I don't have much. I don't have money. I don't have my family, but I have you." She believed that was enough. until the day she met Dr. Robert Sterling. Dr. Sterling was the chief of oncology at St. Jude's. He was young for his position, only 42, brilliant, handsome in a sharp, intimidating way, and completely, utterly godless. Sterling wasn't just an atheist, he was an anti-theist. He despised faith. Why? Because 15 years ago, Sterling had been a believer. He had prayed, he had begged God to save his young wife from leukemia. He had spent nights on his knees in a hospital chapel, and she died anyway, in pain, screaming. That day, Sterling killed God in his heart. He decided that if God existed, he was cruel. And if he didn't exist, then science was the only God worth serving. He devoted his life to medicine, not to heal people, but to fight death with his own hands, trusting only what he could touch, measure, and cut. When Sarah walked into his office, clutching her stomach, Sterling didn't see a suffering grandmother. He saw a biological system failing. He saw a puzzle. He ran the tests, he did the scans, and when the results came back, he didn't sugarcoat it. "Mrs. Jenkins," Sterling said, not looking up from his tablet. The cold blue light of the screen reflected in his glasses. "It's pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Sarah felt the room spin. Stage 4? It has metastasized. Liver, lungs, lymph nodes. It's everywhere. It's aggressive. Sterling finally looked at her. His eyes were like ice. "It is inoperable. Chemotherapy might buy you a month, maybe 2, but the side effects will be severe. If I were you, I'd go home, take the pain medication, arrange your affairs." "Arrange my affairs," Sarah whispered. "You mean die?" "I mean accept the reality, Mrs. Jenkins. There is no coming back from this. The survival rate is 0. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out her small pocket Bible. She held it tight, her knuckles white. Sterling noticed it. He saw the silver cross. A flash of anger crossed his face, old anger from his own past. "And please," Sterling added, his voice dripping with condescension, "don't waste your remaining money on miracle water or faith healers. Biology doesn't care about your prayers." He thought he was giving her a diagnosis. In reality, he was issuing a challenge to the Almighty. If you've ever felt like the world is crashing down on you, if you've ever received news that stole the air from your lungs, subscribe to this channel right now. Because we are about to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and you need to see how to get out of it. Sarah didn't go home to die. She fought, but the fight was a massacre. She was admitted to the hospital 2 weeks later as her body began to shut down. Room 402 became her entire world. The smell of antiseptic, the hum of the air conditioner, the rhythmic beeping of machines. The pain was unimaginable. It wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. As the cancer ate away at her body, the devil began to eat away at her mind. Lying in that hospital bed at night, Sarah began to hear whispers. Not audible voices, but thoughts that felt like intruders in her brain. "You served God for 40 years, and this is your reward? Where is he now, Sarah? Your children don't love you. Your God doesn't love you. You are alone." She tried to pray, but her prayers felt heavy, like they were hitting the ceiling and falling back down. Nurse Maria Ramirez was the only bright spot. Maria was a devout Catholic, a short, stout woman with warm hands and a compassionate heart. She saw Dr. Sterling's coldness and she tried to make up for it. One night, finding Sarah crying silently in the dark, Maria adjusted her pillows. "Mrs. Jenkins," Maria whispered, "can I call someone? Your son, David?" Sarah shook her head weakly. "I called him, Maria. I left 3 messages. He said he has a big project at work. He said he'll try to come next weekend." Next weekend, Maria stopped herself. "I know," Sarah rasped. "I know." The next morning, Dr. Sterling did his rounds. He checked the chart. He saw the morphine dosage. "She's still in pain?" he asked Maria. "Yes, doctor, she's in agony, but she refuses to be fully sedated. She says she needs to be awake to pray." Sterling let out a short, cynical laugh. "Pray? What is she praying for? A new pancreas? Tell her to take the sedation. It's the only mercy she's going to get." He walked over to Sarah. She looked like a skeleton covered in parchment paper. Her eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. "Mrs. Jenkins," Sterling said, leaning over, "why do you torture yourself? There is no virtue in suffering." Sarah looked up at him. Her voice was barely a squeak. "I need to hear him." "Hear who?" Sterling scoffed. "God? Mrs. Jenkins, look around you. If God is here, he's doing a terrible job. I am the one giving you morphine. I am the one managing your hydration. I am the one keeping you alive, not him." It was a cruel thing to say, but Sterling wasn't saying it just to hurt her. He was saying it to validate himself. He needed to believe that he was the highest power in that room. That night, the storm hit. The accusation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Was it true? Had she doubted? Yes. Had she been afraid? Yes. Sarah fell to her knees in the mist. "I am not perfect," she wept. "I failed." The darkness surged forward, ready to engulf her. But then a voice spoke. It didn't come from the angels. It came from through the gate. It was a voice like the sound of many waters, a voice that vibrated in her bones. Sarah. Just her name, but in that name there was so much love it felt like fire. The darkness recoiled, hissing. The voice continued. "Why did you accept the verdict of the man?" Sarah trembled. "He was a doctor. He said it was over." "I am the great physician," the voice boomed, shaking the very foundation of the realm she was in. "I did not authorize your departure. Your work is not done. Your son is not saved. Your doctor is not saved." "But I am dead," Sarah whispered. "My body is broken." "Look at me," the voice said. The gates opened just a crack. A light poured out, brighter than 1,000 suns, yet it didn't blind her. In the center of that light, she saw a figure. She couldn't make out his face. It was too glorious. But she saw his hands. She saw the scars. "I hold the keys to death and Hades," he said. "Not the cancer, not the doctor. Go back and tell them who I am." "What do I say?" Sarah asked, feeling her spirit being pulled backward, sucked back into the cold, heavy shell of her body. "They won't believe me." "You don't need a speech, Sarah. You just need the truth. Whisper my truth." Back in room 402. Nurse Ramirez had just pulled the sheet up to Sarah's chin. She was sobbing quietly. "Rest in peace, mi amor," she whispered. Sterling was by the window, watching the rain. He felt empty. Another victory for death. It reinforced his worldview. We are born, we suffer, we die, we rot. Nurse, clear the room. Call the morgue transport, Sterling ordered, not turning around. Yes, doctor. Ramirez reached for the IV line to pull it out. Gasp! The sound was wet, violent, and loud. It sounded like someone drowning who suddenly broke the surface of the water. Ramirez screamed and jumped back, knocking over a tray of metal instruments. Clang! Sterling spun around. What is it? She gasped. I heard it. Ramirez was pointing at the body, trembling. It's air escaping the lungs, Maria. Basic anatomy. Don't be hysterical. Sterling walked over, annoyed. He grabbed his stethoscope. I'll prove it to you. He placed the cold middle disc on Sarah's chest, right over his silent heart. He listened. Silence. See, Sterling said. She is... Thump, thump. Sterling froze. His eyes went wide. He pressed the stethoscope harder, hurting his own ears. Thump, 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 thump. It wasn't a flutter. It wasn't a dying fibrillation. It was the strong, rhythmic, powerful beat of a marathon runner. Impossible, Sterling whispered. The word tasted like ash in his mouth. Then Sarah's hand, the hand that had been limp moments ago, shot up. She grabbed Sterling's wrist. Her grip was iron. Sterling tried to pull away, terrified, but she held him. Her eyes opened. The milky glaze of death was gone. Her eyes were clear, sharp, focused. She pulled herself up. The tube in her throat gagged her. She reached up and yanked the intubation tube out herself, coughing violently. Mrs. Jenkins! Ramirez screamed, rushing to help, conflicting emotions of terror and joy on her face. Sarah took a deep breath. She looked at the nurse. Then she looked at the doctor. Dr. Sterling was shaking. He was physically shaking. The man of science was witnessing the impossible. You were dead, Sterling stammered, his voice trembling. 3 minutes, no oxygen. You were dead. Sarah locked eyes with him. She didn't look angry. She looked ancient, like she had seen things he couldn't comprehend. She leaned forward, her voice raspy but gaining strength with every syllable. Jesus, you are Lord. The 4 words. She didn't say, I'm alive. She didn't say, it hurts. She declared the hierarchy of the universe. As she spoke the word Lord, the monitors, which had been disconnected, flickered. The one still attached to her finger beeped. Beep, beep, beep. Oxygen saturation, 98. Blood pressure, 120/80. Heart rate, 72. Perfect. Sterling backed away until he hit the wall. He slid down the wall to the floor. He put his hands on his head. I am losing my mind. This is a hallucination. Carbon monoxide leak, something. Sarah looked at him. Check the scans, doctor. What? Check the scans. The next hour was chaos. The hospital staff panicked. A code blue was called, then canceled, then called again. Other doctors rushed in. Sterling, still in shock, ordered a full-body CT scan. He wanted to prove that she was still dying. He wanted to prove that this was just a surge of brain activity before the end. He needed the cancer to be there, because if it wasn't, his entire understanding of reality would collapse. He sat in the radiology booth. The technician, a young man named Dave, looked pale. Doctor, are you seeing this? Sterling looked at the screens. He pulled up the scan from yesterday. A war zone. Tumors everywhere. He pulled up the scan from 10 minutes ago. Pristine. The pancreas was smooth and healthy. The liver was clean. The lungs were clear. Sterling wiped his glasses. He cleaned the screen with his sleeve.
He zoomed in. "Is this the right patient?" he barked. "Yes, sir. Sarah Jenkins. ID number match." "This is impossible. Spontaneous remission doesn't happen like this. Not instantly. Not from stage 4 to 0 in 3 minutes." Sterling stared at the image. The science said no. The image said yes. He walked back to room 402. Sarah was sitting up, eating Jell-O. Nurse Ramirez was praying the rosary in the corner, crying tears of joy. Sterling dismissed the nurse.